Guys, how are y'all doing? I am just waiting on a few people. Thank you for joining me. I'm just moving some stuff around so I can grab uh, my animal and other stuff. So we're going to go ahead and get started in just a minute. So tonight I'm going to go through for those that are watching right now, I'm going to go over the facts and stuff that I want to share, and I'm going to introduce Mochi. And then afterwards, I'm going to answer whatever questions anybody has. Um, so hopefully that goes well. And I hope I don't trip. If you hear any of my dogs or anything, I'm sorry. They like to be noticed as well. All right. So welcome, y'all. So my name is Tinny, and I am with Nature to Go. I have started this outreach company just because there's a lot of environmental education missing, especially in the community that I live in. I figured that I have all these animals that I would share them at least once a week, or maybe more, depending. And then there's other animals that I don't have that we can always talk about as well. So the first one so tonight we're going to talk about axolotls. And if you love axolotls, give me a thumbs up or heart or anything that you want, because they are amazing creatures. They got really popular because I think, was it Minecraft, and and everybody wants one. So I'll go over the good, the bad, and the ugly about owning one as a pet as well. So if any of y'all are interested about it, I will I will go over that too. So let me get Mochi. So I'm not going to pull her out of the water just because axolotls need to stay in the water at all times. They are not an animal that you want to pick up and handle. The extent of her getting out of the water is me pulling her out of her big tank and into the smaller one that y'all are going to see here. This is not a tank that she lives in. She lives in a 40-gallon breeder. But let me go ahead and grab her. All right, let's see if I can do this. So I don't know if y'all can see her very well because of the light, but I'm going to try to see if she'll turn around for me because she's looking at me in the face. So let me see if this is a little bit better. Do y'all see Mochi? Mochi's like, I don't want to see anybody. All right, so I'm going to put her down and I'm going to pick her back up here in a minute. So axolotls, very cool, but y'all know what an axolotl really is. And a lot of people have a hard time because they just think it's a lizard. But what axolotls are, they're an aquatic salamander. All salamanders start off in the water. Salamanders go to the water, lay eggs. They will have little larvae hatch. They're not called tadpoles, they're called larvae. And they're going to look distinctly different than like a regular tadpole. So they're going to have like the little frills that are out on the side of their head, and they're going to swim and eventually grow legs. Regular salamanders will lose those gills, and then but axolotls do not lose their gills. So they stay in their larval form their entire life. Sometimes if they're stressed, like if their water levels are too warm, or there's a lot of different environmental factors that go in, and if they're stressed, they'll actually turn into a regular salamander. And we don't want to stress her out too much because I love Mochi. So what a salamander goes through, so they're larval, just like a caterpillar, and they go through a metamorphosis. Uh, Axolotls don't go through that, so it's an incomplete metamorphosis where they just stay at that larval stage. So they have everything. They have the gills, but they also develop lungs. So they're able to come up and breathe through the air if they want, but for the most part, they breathe through their gills, and they also exchange gases through their skin like a regular amphibian. Now, they feel very slimy, but that is just because all amphibians are pretty much slimy with the exception of toads. So if you joined me last week, we talked a lot about what makes toads a little bit different than frogs and other amphibians. So this one, she's going to be slimy because she exchanges gases through the water, not only through her gills, but through her skin and her lungs too. They they have a flat tail that has a little. Let's see if I can get her to scooch over this way. I should have put her in a small container, but I didn't want to stick her in a smaller container. So she's got a long flat tail, which is really kind of hard to see with this, but if you could kind of see her right there, she's got a notch in her tail. Now, what makes them really special, especially for researchers and stuff, is that they have the ability to regrow limbs. Now, they do have a limit on that, so they can regrow limbs up to 5 times. And that's just because they have a specific kind of protein that's in their DNA and stuff that allows them to do that. And so they're very important to researchers because sometimes people lose limbs and they're trying to figure out, well, what can we harness that's in the axolotls to help us maybe regrow tissue or stuff without using things that are controversial. So let's see. In the wild, they're rated on the IUCN list as critically endangered. They're only endemic to a lake right outside of Mexico City. There used to be a larger lake system, but because of population growth and then just things like pollution and stuff, these lakes have gotten smaller. They used to be found traditionally in 2 of the lakes over there. One is gone and the other one is left, but it is plagued with a lot of pollution and stuff. And so since they absorb things through their skin, they're very susceptible to any kind of pollution or any kind of water, like even if it's not that big of a deal for everybody else, amphibians tend to be affected by even the tiniest bit of water differences or water chemistry changes. They're very, very popular as pets. I'll get to that in a moment. There's only about 1,000 left that are in the wild. So their habitats are shrinking. They don't have a lot of predators, but they do have things like carp that inhabit the lake where they're found. So they can get they can get eaten by those. But these guys usually hang at the bottom, and so since we have more people joining us and stuff, and everybody has come to see Mochi, and it's really hard to see Mochi through here. She has our back to us because she is a diva. But these guys, she's young. She's only about a year and a half. She's a little skinny, but she moves around a lot. She gets fed a few times a day. But don't worry, we'll fatten her right back up. So, but in the pet industry, they come in so many different colors. But what Mochi is called a wild type, and that is what they are naturally. That's what their natural color is. But they can be albino, they can be melanistic, so that means that they could be all the way black, or they can be mottled or piebald. There's all sorts of different colors that they could come in. Now, in the wild, they usually eat things like worms and mollusks and little gastropods. Here in captivity, they usually eat things like salmon pellets, and they also eat things like bloodworms as well. Now, let's see. Oh, and I forgot to tell you, they have the longest genome known to man. So their DNA strands and stuff are way longer than ours. So they're pretty complex little creatures. Well, let's see if I can answer some questions. So I got, what do they feel like? How old do they get? They live to be about 20 years old or so, depending on how your animal husbandry is. But just know that they can live it to at least 20 years old if your animal husbandry is on point. So that means just giving them what they need, make sure that they don't have uh, certain things, like you don't want to put really small gravel in your tank, things that they can eat, because whenever they have teeth, like little lizard teeth, but they don't bite with those. They actually eat with suction. So whenever you feed them, they're just going to inhale really fast and kind of pop up, and that's them eating. And then you'll see them move their mouth a little bit to kind of, they have two little plates on the inside of their mouth that can kind of help squish stuff. But they usually don't bite. I've never had Mochi bite, and I hand feed her a lot just because she stares at me during the day and I can't help but to feed her. Let's see. Tiffany loves axolotls, and it does take a lot of, you have to, with any pet that you're considering on getting, you want to make sure you do all the research that you can, so that way you are able to give that animal above and beyond. So just don't do just the bare minimum. Look at like tank temperatures. So these guys live in a, naturally, they live in a lake that is fed with like cold water. Um, so here in captivity, their temperature has to be between like more than like right around 65 to 70 at the most, but you don't want to go any longer than that, higher than that, because it'll cause undue stress on them. So I have an animal room with all the reptiles and stuff like that, and then the hedgehogs, because they require heat. So she actually lives in the house with us because I keep the house cooler. I have to keep the animal room warm because of all the snakes and other reptiles that I have, and plus the hedgehogs that need that heat as well. And so she can't survive very long in something that warm. So she gets to live in our living room. And I usually don't take her out to public events just because it is something, unless she is specifically something that we need to teach about. Other than that, I try to reserve her for any kind of virtual programming. I did virtual programming with another facility that I was at, and so she would come out on that, but I don't like to jostle her around too much, just because they sometimes are kind of finicky. Christy, you don't have to cut up live worms to feed them. Actually, they you can give them salmon pellets, which are plenty enough, nutrient wise, plenty enough for them. But they also like bloodworms, and you could get bloodworms frozen in the like the frozen food section in the like pet stores, where they have the rats and then the other like cichlid food and stuff, and it comes in like this little blister pack, so you can take a blister pack out. I feed her only a half of one, so as it's still frozen, I'll cut that half, and then I'll actually let that thaw out and then give it to her. You can sink like a little plate or something like a flat rock in there, and then put the bloodworms on there, and they'll come over, and she looks like she's eating dinner off of the plate. But you don't have to. She doesn't like red wigglers or any of the. Don't feed them night crawlers because that's like way too big. But the red wigglers, I've seen people feed them. I've tried them with her, and she, even whenever they're small or cut up, she's like, no thanks. But my box turtles are glad whenever I make that assumption for her. So they get about, let me see, I have some notes typed down. They get about 9 inches in length, so they're not very big. You don't want to cohabitate them with any other animal, like fish or anything, because they will eat those fish And then sometimes the fish that people want to keep with the axolotls have a lot of things like thymine in them that can actually kill the amphibian or even a reptile. Because some people like to keep things like ribbon snakes and stuff, the little bitty garter snakes, and they eat fish, but you don't want to give them like goldfish or even certain, like, I think platies are okay, and mollies. But there's like a whole list. So if you really look into what they they need as far as that, you'll know what you're kind of getting into. How do I suggest to feed them? So I feed them by hand. I also have a pair of tongs that have plastic on the end. So whenever I do go stick, if I drop one for some reason, they are not very good at seeing things. Well, you got to think that they live on the bottom of everything, and so they really don't need to see. But their eyesight is very poor. So you don't want to. They'll go around and find stuff, but they're not the best if you're hoping that they uh, will find whatever you put in there. So, what kind of water? Dechlorinated water. You want to use keep in mind that they are amphibians, and like I said, because of how they can absorb things through their skin, you don't want to give them anything. You don't want to put in regular tap water. I have a distiller. I also raise carnivorous plants, and carnivorous plants need a distiller. So I save up that water as I do the distilling, and that's the type of water that I put in them. She's in a 40-gallon breeder. You could start off with them. I want to say the lowest I would go if you get a baby would be a 10-gallon, but you don't want to go any smaller than that. But they like space, and she's got shelves in there, kind of built in up high. So if she wants to come out and get a little bit more shallow, she can. Or if she wants to hide, she's got hides that she can hide in. Let's see. Do you have to cut up their food? No, you don't. The only thing that you have to cut up is if you do decide to feed them worms, you want to make sure that they're cut up in little pieces that are tiny like that. But you don't want to do it. Does their water need to be cold? Yes, they do. And if you keep them in if you like to keep your house warm, then I would advise getting a chiller. Chillers are expensive, so if you don't want to do a chiller and your temperature is right on that edge, then I would get like a fan. There's the desk fans and clip-on fans that you could do. You want to just make sure that there's no way that can fall into the tank. But just be aware, if you use something like a chiller or a fan, you're going to increase evaporation, and it's going to cause you to change out the water more often. So we do a 50% water change every week for her to make sure that her water stays nice and clean. She does have a pump on there too. Let's see, what else? How expensive do they get? They're not very expensive unless you go with the really fancy, like I said, the piebalds and different patterned ones. The more unique they are, the more expensive they'll be. But like, I've seen them at the reptile show last weekend, and they were like $20. But it's not the animal that's going, because you'll have a lot of cheap animals like bearded dragons and stuff for sale. You can get them very cheap too. And what really costs is their setup to make sure that they are where they need, where they need to be. So like bearded dragons need certain lights, and they need fresh food and vitamins and stuff. And so it adds up really quick. Are they okay with being alone? Yes, they are. They are. They will eat each other if you get one that's small. Now you can cohabitate them if they are of the same sex, but I just don't, because you will have conflict in your tank just in case. And then sometimes males present as females, until the last minute. You can easily check out the sex once they get sexually mature, but sometimes you think an animal is sexually mature, and then suddenly you have eggs and you have other things in your tank. Then you're like, what is that? And so the males deposit little cone-shaped um, reproduction stuff, and so those look like cones for them. Let's see, what else? They're okay with being alone. Yes, they will. So adult axolotls will eat their larvae. They'll even eat smaller. So if you have a largish axolotl, and if you have a smaller one, it'll increase conflict where you'll see one maybe lose a leg or stuff like that. And so you just want to make sure. Let's see what else. Can you put plants in with them? Yes, you just have to look and see what plants are safe. Some plants are not safe with axolotls. Some are fine, but usually there's websites dedicated to their care, and that they can get a little bit more specific about like what plants are okay. I don't have any plants in there with her except fake plants, just because I am not, other than the native plants that I grow and the carnivorous plants, I am not a plant person. I will kill a plant quicker than anything. So, how often do you clean her tank? So, once a week I clean, but I spot clean several times a day. She does have a strong filter on there, but that filter can only pick up so much, and their poop and stuff is pretty heavy. So, I usually get a turkey baster, which is good. And you can use that turkey baster to spot clean everything. I test their water, her water. I'm a little nitpicky about it, so I test her water twice a week. Usually you could test it once a week, but I clean out her water with a 50% water change every week, and that usually is pretty good. It keeps my parameters pretty nice. What age do they reach maximum size? They reach maximum size about 2 or 3 years. She's, like I said, she'll be 2 soon, and she's still kind of small. But it depends on the individual axolotl too. It's not like what you've heard. You can't keep an animal in a small tank and them only grow to that tank. They're going to grow regardless. And I see a lot of it. We're going to get off the subject, but like turtles, people like to get like the little red ear slider turtles and keep them in a small tank. And they think, or like goldfish, where they only stay in this little thing. Well, goldfish get to be like huge. I don't know if I can, they get pretty big. So think like koi size, that's how big goldfish can grow. The same thing with turtles. The males get to be about this big, so about 8 inches, and then the females get almost like a foot and a half, maybe 16 to 18 inches. So it's never good to keep them in just a small container. Where do you find them in the wild? They are found in a lake complex right outside of Mexico City. I will butcher that name, but it starts with an X. Uh, I was trying to practice it earlier, and sometimes I could say it during a program. Today, I just could not. But traditionally, this was a big lake complex. Now it's only down to one lake, and like I said, they're critically endangered with about 1,000 left in the wild. But in captivity, they do great. We have successfully bred them like constantly, so they they are good, and they would probably be good in the wild if we would treat our environment a little bit better than what humans have been. How long does it take for the tank to cycle? I usually do about a week or so. That's usually good for that. So if you're planning on getting one, set up your tank from there and work on your parameters before you actually put in a thing. What pet store can you get a healthy axolotl? Do not go to any of the local pet stores if you are in the Slidell area. I go there to get supplies, but I would try to find a reputable breeder. There's a few, so if you know me personally and you're interested, just go ahead and message me, and I can put you in touch with some of those breeders. There's a couple in Slidell, and they're usually at the reptile shows. They can't really sit there and talk to you at the reptile shows, but if you have any questions specifically afterwards, they are usually, I know one of them, I think it's like called Fleur de Lis Axolotls or something. The girl that owns that will talk to you forever if you want. Let's see. I'm going to show you her again because she is awfully cute. So you can see that she's got a notch in her tail. So that notch has been there. They can regrow limbs, but they tend to not, if they get battle scars and stuff on them, like that notch in their tail, they don't tend to grow those back. But but any of their arms and stuff, they are able to grow back up to about 5 times. I am in Louisiana. I'm in Southeast Louisiana. How long can they live out of water? They can't live very long out of water. They get most of their oxygen and stuff through their gills. So those little frills that are on the side of their head are their external gills, and that's what they mainly use. But they don't. They don't. It's kind of like taking a fish out of water. So you don't want to keep them out of the water. And even if they have lungs and stuff like that, their lungs are made specifically to, they can come up and grab air, but for the most part, they do that gas exchange through their skin. That gas exchange through their skin goes through their lungs. And so that's how their respiratory system works. Let's see, anything else? I think I answered everybody. Did I answer everybody's question? Oh, I'm glad I was able to help you, Ty. They it is they're one of the higher maintenance animals that I have, and one that doesn't get to see people nearly as much as the other animals. But I do love her. I love taking care of her. It's kind of it is a lot, but whenever I do take care of her, I kind of zone out and just do my thing. And I just enjoy the process of working on my husbandry with her and making sure. Now, she doesn't have, like, to go over, she doesn't have a chiller on her tank. It's just that I keep my house cold, and she is not in like a window or anything, so I don't have to worry about the water warming up too much. But yeah, she doesn't have a chiller. She has a fan that goes on her. Let's see. Is it true that if they stay out of the water, they will transform into a normal salamander? So they do transform into a normal salamander, but it's whenever they're really stressed. It's not whenever they stay out of the water. So don't think of it like whenever you see those mermaid movies and stuff, and the mermaids stay out of the water or dry off and then they turn into people. It's not like that at all. It's just something that is triggered whenever they go through a lot of stress. So a lot of like temperature changes. If their water chemistry is kind of crazy and wonky, like if you have too much nitrates or ammonia or anything like that in the tank, sometimes that can trigger that change as well. But normally you don't want to trigger that, because usually whenever they turn into a normal salamander, they don't live very long as a normal salamander. But so you want them to live as long as you can. Yes, Tiffany, I did come out to your festival, and I'd be happy to come out to festivals again. Just let me know. Would I still keep it as a pet if that were to happen? I would. And then I would be upset, because then I would think that whatever I did to to cause that. There's something lacking that I didn't do or didn't give her as far as her needs and to go. So I wouldn't, I would be very upset if she turned into a regular axolotl or a regular salamander. And so I strive not to do that. I've been animal husbandry has been a passion of mine for over 25 years, and I believe if you're going to have animals in human care, you need to make sure that you go above and beyond what they require. How you live in Louisiana too? I do too. So if you need to jostle them around uh, for hurricane evacuations or anything like that, I would get something like this that she's in now. So like a critter carrier thing. You could go even a little bit smaller, especially if it's something that you need to use for emergencies. It's got a lid on it. I would get you, so with her, fill up as much as you can, about halfway. She doesn't need any more of that of water in there. Fill it about halfway up whenever you are needing to evacuate. Invest in a battery operated bubbler. You can get one, I think they sell them at Walmart in the sporting goods section, and then like at Academy and stuff like that. They take AA batteries, and about three of them. I have one. So if I do take her anywhere, I hook her up to that uh, battery bubbler. That way she'll have oxygen and stuff in there. And but all of my animals, I have a big thick packet of who gets to go in what container and how we evacuate her. You can put her in a cooler. You just want to make sure that the cooler is not jostled around too much, and you don't want it to be like a Yeti. A Yeti is pretty airtight, and you want to allow that air circulation through there. And so get you like an igloo one, none of the ones that want to pretend to be Yetis or anything like that, because you want to make sure that, uh, like I said, that the air flows through there pretty well. So whenever you use your bubbler, it's not just bubbling and putting in CO2 or anything like that. If I had to run with the axolotl, what would happen? I hope that I never get put in that situation. But have you ever seen, like, what is it, like the games where the kids have to like run with a egg on a spoon or something? Then that's probably how I'd try to walk or run with the axolotl. What do you suggest? I for if you're gonna just evacuate and it might not be long, I wouldn't worry about that. But if you are evacuating and it looks like it's a really bad hurricane, I would go ahead and put holes in it just in case. Thank you, Ty. I'm glad that you enjoyed it. We're just gonna wrap up here. Do y'all want to see Mochi one more time? Let's see if I can get her, turn her around. She's already cooped in there. There she is. She's so pretty. She's my little buddy. And even if they can't see very well, they respond to shadows and stuff. So if they start recognizing your shadow uh, and they associate you with food, they will come up to you and kind of be like, "Hey, are you going to give me food?" I almost named her Toothless. She's not black, but she is a wild type, so she's like a dark gray color. But there's some really cool different shades of axolotl out there that you can do. And look at that. Don't mind her poop and her food in there because I dropped some food in there earlier. I did not make it in her mouth. She is great though. There. The ring light is definitely harder to see her. All right. So if anybody doesn't have any more questions, me and Mochi are going to head on out of here. Ty, you got one from Build-A-Bear. How? I tried so hard to get one from Build-A-Bear, and they were sold out. She is adorable. I absolutely. She was one of those where I got her purely for myself, and I wasn't thinking about any outreach or her being an ambassador animal or anything. And in fact, she lived, whenever I worked at Infinity Science Center, she stayed in my office for the longest time. And then, like, before a couple months before I left, I finally put her on exhibit just because it's so cold in the museum. And so I was assured that her water would be okay. How much do they go to the bathroom? They go to the bathroom a lot. Maybe I have to, maybe about like 4 times a day or so. They go quite a bit. But that's what that turkey baster is for. That turkey baster, you can suck all that stuff up and get you like a throwaway cup or like a Mardi Gras cup that you use just for that, and just spot clean it as you go, and you're good. All right. So I'm going to go ahead and go. If you are local to me, this Saturday I will be at in Madisonville by the Maritime Museum. The little festival that they're having is absolutely free. So you come and check me out. I'll be at the kids' activity tables and stuff. I may or may not have animals. It just depends. Just My insurance is kind of picky on and all that stuff. So once I get my insurance sorted out, I might have animals. If not, I have a lot of cool interactive activities that we could do at the table. All right. So if y'all need anything else, or if y'all have any other specific questions, just message me on the page and I'll be happy to answer them. The name of the festival is called Boats on the Wall, and that is in Madisonville. It is put on by the Maritime Museum over there. And it's there's going to be all sorts of different boats on display there, and then there's a cruise that you could sign up for, like an educational boat tour. It's kind of pricey though, but if you have the time and the money and want to do it, they launch right outside of there's right by the Chifuncta Lighthouse. There's a wharf, and that's where they're going to be launching out of. Alrighty. I will let y'all go. Y'all have a great night, and hopefully I'll see y'all again. Bye, guys.